It all started as an innocent joke during a company meeting. It was Friday night, and everyone was relaxed and enjoying the opportunity to have fun outside of work. The music was playing softly in the background, while the colleagues were chatting animatedly and sharing laughs. I, Anna, was near the bar having a drink when my boss, Mark, approached me. Mark was a charming man with an aura of confidence that always caught my attention. He smiled a smile that seemed innocent, but had a touch of mischief. We started talking about different topics, from the company's projects to our sports preferences. At one point, the conversation turned to basketball, a passion we both shared. Mark, always competitive, suggested we make a bet on who would win the weekend's basketball game. He was a fan of the rival team to mine, and the healthy rivalry made me even more excited with the idea. Confident in my team, I accepted immediately. The fun and relaxed atmosphere made it seem like the bet was just another joke between colleagues. "What do you want to bet?" I asked, half thinking he would suggest something silly like paying for lunch on Monday. Mark, with a mischievous twinkle in his eye, replied, "Whoever loses will have to do something of the winner's choice." At that moment, I didn't realize how ambiguous and even dangerous this could be. The drink and the light party atmosphere made me lower my guard, and I accepted without a second thought. The night continued peacefully, with more conversation and laughter. I was sure my team would win, so I didn't even worry about what Mark might ask. It was just a joke, something to make the weekend more interesting. On Sunday, I watched the game with enthusiasm, but soon I saw that my team was starting to lose ground. Anxiety started to grow inside me, and in the end, my team lost. I felt butterflies in my stomach, remembering the bet. But still, a part of me thought Mark would not ask for anything more than a funny or embarrassing task. On Monday, when I arrived at work, Mark was waiting for me with a kind and intriguing smile. He reminded me of the bet, and still trying to keep the mood cheerful, I asked him what he wanted me to do. It was then that he, with a serious look, but still with that touch of mischief, said, "I want you to go to dinner with me without telling your husband, Peter." That took me by surprise. It was not what I expected, and suddenly the harmless joke seemed to have taken a much more serious turn. At that moment, I felt a mixture of emotions: surprise, discomfort, and a strange excitement. The idea of doing something hidden, something that would break the rules, was both frightening and intriguing. Mark looked at me, waiting for my answer, and I knew that rejecting the bet was not an option. The embarrassment of coming back on my word and the pressure of the moment made me agree. I nodded, trying to hide the nervousness I felt. I didn't know that this decision would be the beginning of a series of events that would change my life in a way I never imagined. The night of the dinner, I was a nervous wreck. I spent the whole day trying to concentrate on work, but my mind was completely full of anxiety and anticipation of what was to come. When I got home, I went straight to the shower, trying to relax and get ready for the night. I chose an elegant red dress that highlighted my curves in a subtle way, without being too provocative. It was important to keep things as professional as possible, at least at first. While I was applying my makeup, my thoughts were racing. What did Mark want with this dinner? Why had he chosen me for this bet? My hands were shaking slightly while I was applying mascara, and I had to take several deep breaths to calm my racing heart. When I finished, I took one last look in the mirror and, satisfied with what I saw, grabbed my purse and left. I arrived at the restaurant. Mark was already there, sitting in a more private corner. He stood up when he saw me and came to greet me with a welcoming smile. His presence had an aura of confidence that was both comforting and intriguing. During dinner, Mark was the perfect gentleman. He brought me closer to the chair, gave me subtle compliments, and made me laugh with his funny stories. Every minute that passed, I felt more at ease, and the initial tension started to dissipate. Our conversation flowed naturally, starting with work-related topics and gradually evolving to more personal ones. We talked about our dreams, fears, and even our families. At some point, I realized that I was enjoying the attention Mark was giving me. He had a way of making me feel special, as if I was the only person in the world at that moment. His eyes sparkled with genuine interest, and his words were always carefully chosen to please me and make me feel good. The mood gradually warmed up, Mark began to give more personal compliments, commenting on how my smile lit up the room and how captivating my presence was. I knew this was beyond the professional limit, but I couldn't help the feeling of pleasure his words gave me. It was as if he was seeing me in a way that no one else did, and it was intoxicating. In the middle of a shared laugh, our gazes met in a way that made my heart skip a beat. There was an intensity there, a silent connection that said more than any words could express. My body reacted instantly, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. With each passing moment, it became clearer that this dinner was becoming much more personal and intimate than I had anticipated. The night continued with more laughter, more conversations, and a growing closeness. When it was time for dessert, Mark suggested sharing a bowl of ice cream with chocolate syrup. The simple gesture of sharing dessert became a symbol of our connection, a moment of sharing innocent and loaded with meaning. Dinner was over, but the story was far from over. Mark had awakened something in me that I could no longer ignore. I left the restaurant with something much more complicated and intense. After dinner, Mark suggested we go to a quiet bar, a place he knew where we could continue the conversation in a more relaxed atmosphere. I accepted, still feeling the warmth of our connection during dinner. The small bar was charming, with soft lights and ambient music that created an intimate atmosphere. We chose a table in a more private corner where we could talk without interruptions. As soon as we sat down, Mark ordered 2 glasses of wine. I was a little nervous, but the wine helped me relax. As we talked, he started to be more daring, complimenting my beauty and intelligence in a way that made me feel embarrassed, but also flattered. I felt my cheeks blush with each compliment, and my heart beat faster. After a few drinks, the atmosphere in the bar became even more intimate. The soft music and dim lights created an almost magical ambience. Mark kept looking at me with that sparkle in his eyes, and every time he spoke, his words seemed to envelop me in a cloak of seduction. The wine had loosened my defences, and I felt more relaxed, more open to his advances. The conversation had become more personal, and he began to make comments that went beyond the simple, "You are beautiful." He talked about how fascinating I was, how he was attracted to my intelligence and my sense of humour. I could feel my heart beat faster with each compliment, my face heated with the mixture of embarrassment and pleasure. At one point, Mark moved his face a few inches from mine. His voice was low and soft when he said, "Anna, I can't stop thinking about you." These words took me by surprise, and before I could respond, he placed his hand on mine. The touch was light but full of intent, and a shiver ran through my body. After a few more drinks, I found myself giving in to Mark's advances. The emotion of the moment, the undeniable chemistry between us, and the slight intoxication from the alcohol made it impossible to resist. When we got to his car, my heart was beating fast. Mark opened the door for me, and as soon as I got in, he approached me, closing the door behind him. In the cramped space of the car, the closeness between us was electrifying. Mark turned to me, and before I could say anything, he started kissing me. His lips were hot and urgent against mine, and I felt a shiver of pleasure run through my body. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. Mark's kiss was intense and passionate, and I responded with equal fervour. His hands explored my face and neck, each touch sending waves of heat throughout my body. I knew this could have serious consequences. I was playing with fire, but I couldn't resist. There was something about him, something in the way he made me feel that was simply irresistible. We became intensely involved there in the car. The kisses became more urgent and the touches more daring. Despite the passion of the moment, there was a line I was not willing to cross. I kept my limits, knowing I could not let things go beyond a certain point. Mark seemed to understand this, respecting my signals without pushing. The intensity of the moment was enough to leave a deep mark. When we finally separated, both panting, the air between us was thick with unsatisfied desire. Mark looked into my eyes, and I could see a look of satisfaction and frustration. "Anna, you are incredible," he said with his voice hoarse with emotion. "I want more moments like this with you." I knew it wouldn't end there. I had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. As I drove home, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I felt a great guilt, but at the same time, an emotion that I could not ignore. What had started as an innocent bet had turned into something much more complex and dangerous, and I was about to find out where this story would lead me. As I drove home, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The night had been intense and full of contradictory feelings. As I drove through the silent streets, I tried to process everything that had happened. The guilt consumed me inside, but at the same time, the thrill of that forbidden experience never left my head. I felt trapped in a moral dilemma where every choice seemed wrong somehow. When I finally arrived home, I saw that the lights were still off. Peter, my husband, had not yet arrived. That gave me some relief because I didn't know if I could face him at that moment. I walked into the house and went straight to the bathroom. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, trying to find some sign of change, something that would give away what had happened. But to the outside world, I looked the same. I took a quick shower, as if the water could wash away the guilt I felt. I put on my pajamas and lay down on the bed, but it wasn't easy to fall asleep. I stayed staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the night in my mind, feeling my heart clench with every memory of Mark's kiss. When I finally heard the door open, I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep. I was not prepared to face his questions or his presence. In the following days, Mark behaved normally at work, as if nothing had happened. But there was something different in his eyes every time our gazes met. There was a glimmer of complicity, a silent understanding of what we had shared. These gazes constantly reminded me of the line I had crossed and kept me in a state of constant alertness and anxiety. At work, I tried to maintain a facade of professionalism, but inside, guilt and emotion mixed together, creating a weight that was hard to bear. Every time I saw Peter, my heart sank with the secret I kept. He looked at me with such love and trust, and I felt like an imposter. I tried to act normal, but I knew I was failing. There was an invisible wall between us, built by my own actions. The guilt was overwhelming. At night, while Peter slept next to me, I lay awake, lost in my thoughts. The memory of Mark's caresses, of his kisses, kept coming back, increasing my confusion. However, the emotion was also there. Every time Mark looked at me with that look of complicity, I felt a shiver of anticipation. I knew he still wanted more, and that moved me in a way I could not explain. The adrenaline of the forbidden was intoxicating, and despite the guilt, a part of me longed for more of that feeling. Living with this secret became a constant battle. At work, the interactions with Mark were an emotional roller coaster. Every accidental touch, every whispered word, all carried enormous weight. And every time I returned home, I felt the pressure mounting. Peter didn't deserve this, and I knew I needed to make a decision, but I was trapped in a cycle of desire and regret. The dangerous line I had crossed no longer seemed like a mere momentary transgression. It was a path that would change my life forever. Each day, the choice between desire and morality became clearer, but for now, I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, trying to find a way out of the mess I had created in my life. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between Mark and me only grew stronger. Our secret meetings became more frequent, and each one left me feeling more conflicted than the last. The thrill of being with him was undeniable, but so was the guilt I felt every time I looked at Peter. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but I couldn't seem to stop. The passion between Mark and me was like a fire that couldn't be extinguished, and every touch, every kiss, only fueled it further. One evening, after another intense encounter with Mark, I drove home with tears streaming down my face. The weight of my actions was becoming too much to bear. I knew I had to make a choice, but the thought of losing either Mark or Peter was unbearable. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Peter standing at the door looking worried. I quickly wiped my tears and put on a brave face, but deep down, I knew that something had to change. I couldn't keep living this double life. That night, as I lay in bed next to Peter, I made a decision. I would end things with Mark. It was the only way to save my marriage and my sanity. The next day, I met Mark at a quiet cafe and told him everything. He was visibly upset, But he understood. We shared one last kiss, filled with all the emotions we had kept hidden for so long. As I walked away, I felt a sense of relief mixed with sadness. I had made the right choice, but it wasn't an easy one. Returning home, I felt a new sense of determination. I would rebuild my relationship with Peter and focus on the future. The guilt was still there, but with time, I hoped it would fade. As the days passed, Peter noticed a change in me. I was more present, more engaged in our relationship. He didn't know what had happened, but he could see that I was trying. Slowly, we began to heal. The journey was long and filled with challenges, but I was committed to making it work. Mark was still a presence in my life, but in a different way. We remained colleagues, but the intensity of our previous relationship had diminished. There were still moments of tension, but we both knew that we had made the right decision. The bet that had started as an innocent joke had changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. It had tested my morals, my commitment, and my strength. But in the end, it had also shown me what truly mattered: love, trust, and the willingness to fight for what is right. As I stood on the other side of that experience, I knew I was stronger for it. And although the memories of my time with Mark would always be a part of me, they no longer defined me. I was ready to move forward and embrace the future with Peter, knowing that together we could overcome anything. The bet that had seemed so harmless had indeed changed everything, but I was determined to make the best of the lessons I had learned and build a future that was grounded in honesty and love. The nights of restlessness began to wane as Peter and I grew closer. Our conversations deepened, and we started to reconnect on levels we hadn't touched in years. The shared laughter, the tender moments, and the mutual support all began to rebuild the trust that had been frayed. Each day brought us a little closer to the love we once had, and each step forward made the past seem a little more distant. The guilt that had once weighed so heavily on my heart started to lift, replaced by a sense of hope and determination. Mark respected my decision and maintained a professional demeanour at work. There were no more secret meetings, no more stolen glances filled with unspoken words. Instead, there was a mutual respect and understanding that allowed us to work together without the tension that had once been so palpable. I found myself feeling grateful for the growth and clarity that had come from such a tumultuous experience. As the seasons changed, so did I. The woman who had been caught in a whirlwind of emotions and conflicting desires was now someone who understood the value of boundaries and the importance of honesty. My relationship with Peter became a testament to our resilience and commitment. We had faced one of the toughest challenges of our lives and had come out stronger on the other side. Our bond was now fortified with the lessons learned and the promises made to never take each other for granted again. The road ahead was still long, but it was one we were willing to travel together, hand in hand. The journey we had embarked upon had tested our love, but it had also proven its strength. I knew that with Peter by my side, we could face any challenge that came our way. The love and trust we had rebuilt became the foundation for a future filled with promise and possibility. And as I looked back on the events that had led us here, I realized that sometimes the most unexpected turns in life could lead to the most profound transformations.